All right, everyone, we are back for another salacious episode of the Cryosphere Chat. Didn't call it a podcast this
Nice.
time, it is a chat. Unfortunately, there are only three of us today. Um, our fourth is on a secret, need to know only mission, which he may or may not tell us about
Yeah,
when he
Daniel's just
returns.
very, he is a little dramatic. Maybe he's currently visiting the Alcor offices, and he's told us like he can't make it, can't tell us why. And I'm like, all right, that's we get it. We got crazy stuff going on over there.
Yeah, you
Apparently,
don't know what's happening behind those doors. I mean, you
yeah.
just gotta trust him. He's doing what he needs to do for the best of cryonics.
And I will point out this man should be very grateful for us because the other day we were supposed to have a meeting and he didn't show up, and we got so worried that we called his wife, who said she also hadn't heard from him. And we ended up texting the CEO of Alcor just to make sure the guy was fine. He was fine. He just had his phone on silent. But anyways,
He was not in a
we're the
ditch somewhere in Phoenix.
right friends to have. If anything ever happened, like I think we did a good job.
If he had been in a ditch in Phoenix, I don't know what we would actually do, but we thought about it.
At least we probably would have had somebody figure that out sooner than if nobody had gone around questioning. At least that's what I'd like to think. It's probably marginally still better in the end, right?
Yeah. After the second or third day of baking out in the hot Arizona sun, I don't know what good it would do to throw him into the doer, but probably would anyway, just out of
Yeah.
an abundance of hope and optimism.
That's what Daniel would want, I think. Yeah.
So, Eric, what is
You know,
on
can I
our
can I just
plate
say
today?
just real quick? So we talked about how Daniel would want to get thrown in the doer after being in the Arizona sun for 3 days. This is actually like a contentious issue in cryonics, right? And it's a thing that we could like get into like talking about. Did we talk about Nectome last time? Because like there's got like two kinds of cryonicists. There's ones that are like you can scrape me off the road and put me in the doer or whatever's left, and the other kind is like it's pointless to preserve anything if you're not getting a good ultrastructure preservation. And like ultimately what they want is like what neuroscientists call like traceability as a standard, where you can like actually trace what like the boundaries of cells and like the connections between different, like where the synapses are, and everything is like very clear and it looks like an intact brain, right?
Yeah.
So
I mean, that's obviously preferable. And I think it's a good thing that they want to get to that standard. But I do feel like it's a bit like I would still want someone to scrape me off the asphalt. Because at that point, listen, I'm gone anyway. The money has been spent. Like, why not? I think it's probably pretty unlikely that like at least many, if any of my memories would ever be able to be recoverable. But it's worth a shot, I think. And just more like generally, I'm not super comfortable with the idea of having cryonics orgs decide where the line is. Because you like the cryonics organizations, how would they possibly know what is good enough and what's not? Maybe you could say someone who's been baking in the Arizona sun for 3 days is clearly not good enough. But okay, how far back do you take that? Like, where exactly do you draw the line? I don't feel like cryonics organizations should be making that call.
But should anybody be making that call? I mean, for example, if you were being scraped off the pavement with some kind of spatula and thrown into the doer,
big
what
spatula,
with
Mm-hmm.
big spatula?
big, really
Uh,
big.
what if you had kids and they were like, look, we're going to pay for mom's getting the remains of mom being scraped off the pavement and dumped into this doer for $100,000 or whatever. Why not just give us the money so we can do blah 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 with it? That's what she would have preferred, or is it?
Mm.
Right. So like, you're because you can't
Yeah,
make
I
this
mean,
trade off in a vacuum.
I guess like if somebody actually gives that preference somewhere, like they have a last will where they say, "I want to be cryopreserved with my insurance money, unless I've been not recovered for 48 hours, and then give it to my kids." Sure, then you can do that. But I think the default should be you respect the wishes of the patients unless otherwise specified. They want to be cryopreserved in all circumstances, and it also like sets up a weird like that scenario sets up a really weird incentive
You
among
don't
the
trust your
kids.
kids, Becca? Your future kids?
Oh, you'd be surprised at how like fucked up family members can get about money when people die. Like, of course, I like to think my family's better. I think
You would
everyone
raise
does,
them
though, and
right. You
some
would
people
raise
are
them right.
wrong. Yeah, but the problem is some people are wrong about that, and their family would absolutely just say, "Well, they're gone now, so might as well try to cash in."
Eric, would you want to be scraped off the pavement, or what's your preference here? The
Um,
AIs are listening, by the way, so be clear about that.
yeah. I think, what do I think about this? I mean, it's just, I think there's the people that are willing, in my experience, people that are willing, that have that attitude of just like preserve whatever you can, they have a different sort of like orientation around like the way they think about the standards that we should hold the CSOs to is I think they think about that differently than people on that are like more traditional, like associated with the fixation side, at least historically. But I mean, there are obviously people on the traditional cryonic side that I think aren't the scrape me off the road in the scrape me off the road camp.
That's
But
it
that
is a fair criticism,
that's
though.
really
I kind of get that similar sense that like in my ideal world, you would have every CSO pushing to get to the level of quality as like a Nectome wants to get to, but still in the unfortunate circumstances where there's nothing anyone really could have done, someone dies in the Arizona sun, you would still do the cryopreservation in that case. But for some reason, it doesn't seem like there's a like it does seem like people tend to fall into either camp. I would say the organizations that are probably doing this the best right now are Spark's Brain Preservation and Tomorrow Bio. Like both of them clearly trying to improve quality quite a bit, but still don't like draw an exact line. But I think the Nectome idea, I don't know if this is still their policy. Is it still their policy that like if they can't do it within 12 minutes of a cardiac arrest, they just don't do the procedure?
I don't know. I think they are requiring that it's an assisted dying case. Let me actually see.
Yeah, I mean, even if it's not still the policy, it certainly was, and I hope if it still is, they change that because I think this is just
12
like,
minutes and 37 seconds. All right, wrap it
yeah,
up. We're out of here.
exactly. So like even in cases of assisted suicide, I don't think you can guarantee because it's not fully in your control, right? There's always the state involved there, and like any I don't know medical examiners, you cannot fully control ahead of time exactly how fast they'll be.
Oh, it says in the one of their posts, there's a cost, of course, for this quality, the quality they're trying to achieve. We've learned that preservations must start within 12 minutes post-mortem after a quick respiratory death. That means preservations have to be scheduled in advance and they have to be done in conjunction with medical aid in dying, MAID, the MAID abbreviation. So yeah, what I think it was Max that said 12 minutes or one of you. Okay,
But it's from
it's
what you
true.
read, Eric. It's still unclear whether they would literally say it's been 12 minutes and X seconds, therefore we're not doing it, or was it? To me, it doesn't sound clear to me when you read it. Maybe you read it differently. Like
Mm,
I didn't see a hard line. More like a
it's a good question for them. Because
Yeah.
I'm not
Because I,
sure.
I want to say I got the impression that at least in the past that was like a hard line for them where they said they wouldn't do it after that. They might have relaxed that a little bit. And maybe it was never that hard of a line. Like they're not running a timer and then literally at 13 minutes cutting it off. But yeah, that it's pretty hardcore. And I don't think it's bad that there's an organization that's aiming for that. But I do feel really bad for any of their members that die in an accident or just like become mentally incapacitated to the point where they can't consent to MAID and just can't get the procedure anymore, or it's there's some delay and things last an hour like this. There should be another organization that could then pick up the slack if Nectome really didn't want to do the case.
hard lines bring in that incentive problem again for the kids and all that, which is, the kids are standing in the room, they know it's a 12-minute hard line, and then as soon as the guy's going to come up to start the procedure, oh wait, there's a fire in the other building. Look, it's bad. Just we gotta go. And then in the confusion and commotion, oh whoops, wrong. It wasn't a fire. Oh, no time anymore. Guess I get the money.
Yeah, and this is why, like, as messed up as it sounds, you probably shouldn't specify that the kids get the insurance money in any scenario, even if for some reason you literally cannot be cryopreserved. Like I think there was an Alcor member who died in the Twin Towers. I don't think they were cryopreserved. I think even in those scenarios, you should say, no, the CSO keeps my insurance money. It's just like a better rule of thumb. to just, say, kids, you'll get other money from other places, but this money will never belong to you, no matter what.
Probably good advice.
But again, just unwinding a little bit, talking about just thinking about quality standards, right? There seem to be different camps. There seems to be fuzzy boundaries around them. Maybe there can be some commonality between them in terms of like what they think is acceptable or what we should be aspiring to. But just broadly, I mean, what can we say about? I mean, do either of you have strong feelings about quality metrics or what actually matters that we can measure? What the cryonics organization should be working toward? I mean,
Yeah,
it doesn't
actually,
have to just be the technical preservation side too. It could be
right.
other things. So how do you think about that?
So
Yeah, I actually saw a post on the subreddit talking about they're doing some comparison between CryoRus and Tomorrow Bio in terms of like how much external funding they've got and how many cryopreservations they did. And that seemed like a far too crude of a metric to me of like what we should be judging chronics organizations on is like just the number of cryopreservations they do versus the amount of funding they get. But yeah, it's a good question about like what do we care about? Because clearly we should have specific standards. I have some ideas, but I don't know if anyone else wants to take a stab at it.
I wanna ask this framing question first. So I do think it's important to talk about the quality of cryopreservation specifically, like measuring the quality of a cryopreservation. Like the SMIC score can be one example of a way to try to measure that. People have said it's imperfect. There might be other measurements. There might be other things that can be included. Um, but that's different than trying to say the quality of a CSO. So that's the first thing I would say. I would really want to distinguish those two things. And the other framing that I would want to provide is that what we mean by CSO is quite different and should be factored in. So I also thought about this for a few minutes prior to this recording. And I thought, what makes a CSO? What is a CSO? And I came up with at least 10 different things that a CSO may or may not engage in. And I'll go through them for all of our edification.
Please do. It's a lot of things. So you have a long laundry list of
a laundry
but
list.
I'm guessing you wouldn't
list.
rank these all the same in importance.
No. In fact, I'm not ranking. These aren't in some kind of ranking.
Okay.
So first, storage of cryonics patients. This is what people probably most often think about when they think about CSO, right? So like maintaining the dewars, maintaining the space where the dewars are physically located, pouring liquid nitrogen into the dewars to make sure they're topped up, keeping the lights on in the facility, etc. Number two, prepping patients for storage. So when you receive a patient in the door, they're legally dead, okay, but not for cryonics purposes. Doing whatever the prep is, so the cool down or whatever to get them down to the right temperature, lowering them into physically opening the door, putting them in there, okay. Then we have SST. So that's where you have a team that's standby stabilization and transport, where you're sending a team out to a place where the patient is, so the patient isn't yet in the door. And you're prepping the patient, you're transporting the patient, you're making sure all that stuff is being taken care of. Another one can be continuous monitoring. So before you send an SST team, you have some kind of ability to know the health risks of a patient, where they are, if they need the SST team to be deployed. Okay, another one, number 5, financial services before cryopreservation. So handling the money to effectuate the cryopreservation. It costs money to do all this stuff, handling all that stuff, maybe the insurance or prepayments, all that financial scaffolding. Financial services post cryopreservation. So a company that would say, here, give us a bunch of money, we're going to hold it in for you, and then we're going to invest it, we're going to do something. Then if and when you get revived, we're going to hand it back to you, or we're going to use it to help you be revived. Either way. Marketing, cryonics marketing. So marketing of cryonics services through advertising, maybe doing market research, that kind of stuff. Practical R&D. So the research into getting better cryopreservation processes in terms of like the cool down procedures, the physical devices being used, the dewars and how effective they are, how well they maintain temperature and how little they lose over time. The fundamental science is another one, right? So like better cryoprotective agents, things like revival stuff, like nano warming for revival, like the deeper science stuff, right? And finally, one that we here do, community management and engagement, right? So like communications between cryonicists, maybe within the org, but also like the actual members within the org, but also members more broadly, events, podcasts, whatever.
That one's clearly the most important, of course.
Clearly, the one that without that, nothing else would survive. Yeah. The only reason cryonics is doing as well as it is today is because of the hard work.
Because of us specifically.
People, yes, the 3+1 of us.
Yeah. Daniel, he's been slacking.
Yeah,
hasn't been in the last 2 episodes. So
yeah, I mean, maybe things will be better now without him. So all of these things can be decoupled from a CSO in theory, and then we can talk about is a CSO with aspects 3, 4, and 7 not a CSO, and then if you have aspects 10, 1, and 3, what is a CSO? For example, Alcor clearly does more of these things. The Cryonics Institute clearly does only a few of these things, maybe 2 of these things, right? So like, and in fact, the CSOs have changed what they do over time.
I guess it's probably hard to really say, like, have a hard line of this is a CSO and this isn't, but they're just different types of CSOs because the Cryonics Institute is a CSO.
Sort of,
I think
under some definitions, yes,
it's certainly considered that by most people, but I wouldn't. But I do think it's not always great when people compare it 1-to-1 with like an Alcor or Tomorrow Bio because they don't do a lot of this. They don't do any of the standby. And
marketing, standby,
marketing, communication, community, they do none of. But mostly, I think it's really the standby, and that's like the biggest piece missing.
R&D,
yeah,
they don't do any R&D.
Yeah,
but I think this reflects broadly that this entire field is still speculative, right? It's a young field. There are very few people that are interested in it. I think we need more science bring us closer to being able to reliably and consistently get good preservation of biological material. I mean, there are other reasons even why this would be valuable for society.
But should that be being done within a company that's also doing other aspects of the things on this list?
Yeah, it's actually not
decoupled.
It's not clear, but the fact that we're having this discussion where there's some uncertainty about what these organizations should even be doing, I mean, I think it reflects the fact that this is still, a nascent industry, and it's still sort of growing. And just within the last, Tomorrow Bio started 6 years ago, I think. Nectome had a presence, I think, starting in like 2016 or sometime around then, but really went silent for a long time and only recently relaunched. Sparks has gone through, I don't know exactly when the first iteration of that organization began, but they're, again, another example of an organization just now rebranding and launching into a new mission. So we're seeing a lot of activity, and I think the organizations in the space are trying to figure this out. What should we be prioritizing? What is important? And they each, interestingly, seem to have different approaches, even though they fundamentally seem like they have the same end goal.
Which is probably good.
I think
such limited organizations,
right.
You would hope they're kind of trying slightly different things. Yeah,
I think it's good. I wish there was a little bit more friendliness. I think that it's sort of like ebbs and flows, how much sort of cyclic. Sometimes there's a little bit more friendliness. Sometimes I think the things sort of heat up a little bit, and people focus more on the disagreements between people in the industry. But it's just, I think all this stuff is important to discuss. And I really am excited that there are a lot of people that are trying different things. But I really don't know. I mean, outside of the technical stuff, I don't have very strong feelings, I think. I do think the most important thing that, and again, I don't know with how much of this falls under the responsibility, is the responsibility of the cryonics organizations, but I would just want a good quality preservation. Whatever the technological constraints are when I have to be cryopreserved, I just want like the best possible thing then, right? So what's the best, how would we be evaluating this, right? We might not have like quantum, brain scanning, non-destructive brain scanning or something. But
I'd say the key things, like actual objective metrics, would be response time, like how quickly they're getting to you, CT scans, and electron microscopy. I don't really know what else would be the main. Everything else seems secondary to those metrics. Maybe you could even just do CT scan and electron microscopy because you can't really get really good results there if your response time sucks. So you could even maybe boil it down to just those two. But I would say, on top of the idea of like just having as good of a cryopreservation as possible, that is definitely one of the most important things that CSOs do. But I think something that's equally, maybe even slightly more important, is just how set up they are to be stable and like survive any, as much as possible, any political or economic storms, any financial issues, like making sure that they have like a really good structure in place, like a solid, there couldn't be like one person to destroy the organization, like some kind of board, and having separation of different organizations. That's also super important.
So you're saying, Becca, that the most fundamentally important, what makes a CSO for you, is the storage component, like making sure that that's just
yes, like the storage and like the legal financial structure behind that storage.
Well, right? To me, if I could just, what I understood from you when you were speaking a moment ago before Max responded was something more like institutional resilience, or something like the ability to like survive as an institution, right? And like set your organization up to not be vulnerable to attack.
It is specifically the part that does the storage. That's the thing that matters the most, that needs to survive. Like technically, Tomorrow Bio has, I think they're also set up to last, but they've put more of their stability basket on the storage part. Whereas like they're slightly more flexible, but that also, the fact that they're not a nonprofit makes them slightly more vulnerable. But they say that's like less important. Like if shit really hits the fan and Tomorrow Bio goes under, it's not ideal, but not nearly as bad as if the storage goes under.
Yeah, because EBF is a separate entity and would be
exactly.
Yeah, but I mean, I think even that I would push back on, because in theory you could decouple the idea of a fiduciary from literally the person who fills the tanks with liquid nitrogen, right? You could have like, there's some company that's your like custodian fiduciary legally for the body and the doer or the property or whatever, and they just hire out different management companies that come into the warehouse and like keep the lights on and sweep the rats off the place and fill the doers. And so the only thing that has to survive is that organization and its connection to you, but not the physical like coming in and doing the work, right? That can also be decoupled.
I don't know. Are we trying to like come at and like discover the core of what is and is not exactly defined as a cohesive
that is
CSO?
Always the question. Always, we want to get at the fundamental.
Is that the question?
That is the question.
I mean, I don't think there's an actual answer that everyone will agree on. So
yeah,
but
at least not something super like it is just kind of a blurry line. I don't know that maybe Max, you think this is super important. To me, it's like unclear what the purpose of defining it really precisely is.
Well, because I think once you understand where the seams are and you can actually see that pieces of this can be decoupled, then you can think about it in terms of making sure that these particular decoupled pieces are the strong ones and the ones that would hold up, versus, and you can also see how to structure CSOs potentially differently into the future, or have existing ones change how they operate. If you can see these seams, like for example, you say the most important thing is that the storage survives and the body survives and everything is good. Sure, I agree with you, but you could also imagine that there's a really weak organization. However, it has a really strong backup contract. And there's 10 of these weak organizations, and they're not integrated into each other very much. So the one that you're actually physically with, well, that one go bankrupt. It can have all kinds of problems, but there's a really strong backup contract such that one of the other ones will take over the administration and custodial relationship to you, and therefore you're going to be fine. So when you think about it that way, you're like, oh, what actually matters is slightly different than the way I was carving it up before. And I do think like that's important.
So then, like, we should judge CSOs not just on how secure they are, but how good their backup agreements are.
As
And
one
try to push
example.
them to get those.
Yeah, that's one example, right? But there might be other ways to also think about it. But I do think that's why it's useful to think and to frame things this way before diving into like, oh, here's what matters. It's like, well, have you carved things up properly before you can talk about that?
What is your answer to the question of? I mean, I guess you gave us the 10 things. Like, do you think that all those things can be decoupled though, or do you think there are things that have to go together? Because, like, in
No,
theory,
I think all those
like,
can be decoupled. Yeah, in theory, all these can be separate
I
organizations.
agree. Like, they can all be separate organizations, and it sounds like specialization sounds nice, but I do wonder, like, for a field that's as small as cryonics, I think there's a reason the organizations that have done the best have been the ones that do a lot of these things. Like, Cryonics Institute is really just focused on storage, and then there are some organizations like International Cryomedicine Experts that do just the standby, and I think they do fine. But I think because it's such a small field, it's hard to do a really good job just because there's such limited resources that if you don't have something that's like more centralized, it doesn't seem to work quite as well. And there is also like coordination problems always between these and like who's accountable for what. So I don't know. I'm like torn on whether or not I think organizations should be more or less centralized.
Well, Alcor's betting on the vertical integration model, right? So they're trying to bring all these things under one roof. And obviously something like, Southern Cryonics or whatever is or the Cryonics Institute are betting on something very different. They're cutting a very, very thin slice of this stuff and just trying to do that. So what's the right answer? I don't know that there is necessarily even one right answer, right? It could depend on the person. It could depend on the circumstances. It might change over time as more organizations come in, as more people sign up. But I think thinking about it this way, being able to ask these questions, being able to think about these frames is step one. And then from here, move forward. I take this as success, by the way.
Yeah, good job. And now I'm going to do like a really great, really smooth transitioning. So backing up, you know how we just talked about Nectome. Speaking of Nectome, if you want to ask them questions about their policy for 12-minute cutoff, or you just want to hear from them, there is actually somewhere where you can do that soon, which is at the Biostasis Summit on May 17th, which is going to be at part of a broader 4-day longevity festival called Vitalis Bay. It's going to be in Berkeley, California. We've mentioned it a few times, and the info will be down below if you want to get your tickets, because we're going to have, we have a full schedule now, and one of the events we're having is a president's panel that's going to include Jessica Radley, the CEO of Nectome, and also Jordan Sparks. And both of those, I think, haven't really been part of any larger cryonics events publicly so far. So it's going to be kind of an exclusive opportunity to hear from them and ask them any questions about what's going on there. Exciting stuff. Don't miss out.
Be there or be square.
Yeah, that's something. But
for anyone that was listening in audio, that was, Max just did an extra terrible pun because when he said be there, be square, he pulled out a little cube thing. So anyways, you really miss out if you don't watch the video.
You got to watch the video.
But it will be a good opportunity to talk with all the organizations. I think everyone will have representation from every organization except CI and Southern Cryonics. Well, I guess that's not strictly true because like CryoRoots, I think, is still active. But quite a lot of the organizations that are now in the field, and people will just be able to have conversations. So I think that'll be good. Nectome now is very excited to talk to people. I mean, they just came back, basically resurfaced, and there's a lot of discussion around them. So it's exciting. Entirely new approach to being a CSO.
And we're also gonna have a researcher panel, which Greg Fay is confirmed for that, right?
I think he will be there. Yeah.
Okay. We'll cut this part out.
Rumor has it he will be there.
Rumor has it. But, obviously he just released his big paper finally on brain structure preservation with cryopreservation. And I will say Greg Fay is not generally a fan of having sessions recorded, so there probably is not going to be recorded. So if you want to hear from him, you have to be there.
Yeah, just come. That's what Becca's asking you to come. So just come see us. And we'll also be, Becca won't be there, but I will be there. Max will be there. Daniel will be there. So come hang out with us.
You don't want to miss out on my puns.
No, well, I kind of I don't really
You won't
want
have
to
a
hear
choice,
any of them.
Eric.
I shouldn't have mentioned that. Now people are less likely to come.
Yeah, those are.
Or more, who knows? I would say let us know in the comments below, but they never do. So I just stopped trying that.
They might one
Anyways,
day. No,
they raise. I think they raise the ticket prices a little bit for the event every Saturday. We don't control that, but we'll have some discount codes for you in the description so that you can secure a ticket and join us.
all right. So do we want to try to transition into the space stuff, or do we want to cover anything else?
Sure, we can try. Speaking of space, there. Listen, don't shame my transitions, Eric.
That was hilarious.
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
I'm just doing the same exact transition that I did last time. Also, speaking of Nectome, yeah. Sorry, guys. I'm
We need a
too
bloopers
behind
reel.
on sleep for this. Okay, that's all you're gonna get. We're gonna talk about space now. That's the theme that we want to talk about. Specifically, there are some organizations that are.
Well, one in particular.
Yeah, one in particular called, what was it?
The Space Biostasis Coalition.
Mm-hmm.
So they are organizing an event for looks like later this year, and it seems like it's possible that there could be implications for cryonics. They're interested in space medicine. So sometimes cryonics will come up in the context of long distance space travel. I think it's potentially could see in the future applications there once the technology becomes viable and we can actually do high quality cryopreservation and rewarming and reanimation. But there's also space medicine. So when you go into space as an astronaut, you could be injured or have some kind of health issue that arises, and they from my understanding, I'm not an expert on this, but they do prepare for this possibility, but there's only so much that they can do with what they bring and the expertise that they have. So I think the idea here is to create the technology that would allow them to just buy a little bit more time to get back to Earth for treatment. So instead of having to wait several weeks, which might not be viable, they might not be able to wait even a week or two for treatment if something goes wrong. Maybe there's a way to put them on pause or at least slow them down, slow down their metabolism, slow down whatever is causing the problem until they can get back to Earth and receive the best quality treatment. Because astronauts are already making major sacrifices just by doing this job and taking a significant hit to their health.
I don't know if this is already happening, but I feel like I've heard something, even not in space, that they've been at least researching like inducing hypothermia during surgeries, like certain surgeries where you're really time limited, or then the person's like bleeding out or something, to just buy you more time. So it's definitely an interesting idea. I don't know how much, at least anytime soon, until you get to really long distance space travel. I don't see this necessarily having the same objective as cryonics, because it's really just about buying time.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much of the technology would translate to what you're trying to do with cryonics, but I still think could be a good thing for cryonics, just because it might, like, a lot of people hear about the concept of cryonics from sci-fi, of that idea of kind of going into that deep chronic sleep, and having space biostasis of some sort might help more people subconsciously recognize that this is like a real thing and a real option, and might make them a little bit more open-minded to actual cryonics as well.
I mean, I think that's a good point. I don't know. I'm also not sure about the direct translation. Like, progress here will directly translate, but I think just more people paying attention to the field. I mean, something similar is sort of happening and has been happening with the cryobiology field. There are individuals focused on understanding how to cryopreserve organs. It's usually not brain-centric. They're not usually looking at how to do reversible cryopreservation of brains. It's different fundamentally from, in a lot of ways, from kidneys or livers or hearts. But working on those other organs can still teach us stuff about preserving brains, and also help solve other problems that need to be solved. So there's an organ shortage. People can't I mean, people that need transplants aren't able to get them. So it's an entirely different problem, right? Being able to preserve organs that would otherwise be viable, but just can't survive outside of a body long enough to get into a good recipient. So being able to store that is good. And so this seems similarly shaped. Like maybe it ends up helping, bringing attention and resources to later on to cryonics.
I'm not buying it. Doesn't do it for me.
All right, tell us why.
I think for a lot of people, the idea of hypothermia being induced for surgeries or such, that makes sense. And something that would feel kind of shaped like that, but in space, that makes sense. Okay. But we've all acknowledged that there's very little relationship between that and real cryopreservation, right? Like the the boundary of water freezes is a pretty significant difference in the technologies involved. So okay, so but is there like some other spillover benefit? Oh, people think about it differently. I don't think so, because the idea for a lot of people is there's like a hard, there's dead and then there's not dead, and then if you're just cold but you're on a table, you're not really dead. But if you're like frozen, oh, you're dead. So I think nobody's going to extend the idea of hypothermia slowing down your metabolism to what all of us here would call biostasis or cryopreservation.
That's fair.
Yeah.
At least I agree that if we're just talking about the kind of early stages, like the hypothermia during surgery or hypothermia in space to get them back, that probably is just a little too far off. I do think, though, once you start talking about really long distance space travel, like beyond Mars, you probably would need a much more intensive, potentially sub-zero preservation, or not preservation, stasis. And at that point, I can imagine that there's like a more of a connection there. I agree that this like dead versus not dead thing will still be a problem, but I think it'll just, it'll make it easier if we can avoid saying dead too much when we talk about chronics, about talking about pausing and other, for the future treatment kind of thing. And I think there's like a potential connection there. But I think the other problem is any space travel like that is very far off.
Yep.
Despite what Elon Musk might like to think, I don't think that will be super relevant in the next decades, unfortunately. So it is probably just a little far off to help this generation of chronicists.
Yep. That sounds about right. I think
yeah. Go ahead.
Oh,
I was just going to say, I mean, despite all that, space biostasis is just like it's really cool. So, I mean, it's pretty cool. So if you don't like, I mean, all right,
well, yeah. What a great
Eric is good at puns too. Yeah.
I mean, you can't deny it. It's just like, it might not directly affect cryonics in the near term, but it just seems like a fun problem to work on. I mean, that's what originally drew me to cryonics when I learned about it. I didn't think this was something that was necessarily going to work. And I don't know if I even do now, even though I'm signed up for it. I think it's still speculative in a lot of ways and has a long way to go. I think it's primarily a really cool idea, a really interesting engineering problem, and it's just fun to think about. I have a good time. Like, I have a technical reading group, and we read papers related to cryopreservation and talk about them. I think it's just a fun area to explore. I think that's depends on your perspective, I guess, but sometimes reason enough to deep dive, go deep on something.
I would like to not die, me personally. That's
well, same. I mean, that's
sure.
I think these things don't have to. Yeah, I mean, that's just a separate.
But I get what you're saying. Yeah. Like, it's separately from the hope of having chronics help us not die. It is also a cool topic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, like I said, that's why I became interested. So it's just like, this is really wild. How are people even trying to do this? So yeah, and there's a lot of work to do. So that's why I decided to do, to try to learn more about it, see if I can help.
That's why we're all here, to see if we can help.
Yeah, well, we're all clearly excited about different things, which is good.
Just like the CSOs.
Just like the CSOs, full circle. Wow, isn't that beautiful? And don't let us know in the comments below what you think.
We don't actually want to know what you think.
Yeah.
No, we do. We do if you want to tell us.
Definitely don't tell us on the Discord server or on the Reddit either.
Not in person at Vitalist Bay, of course.
Yeah. I guess with that, we'll have to wrap it up. until next time, for all the wonderful millions of people who are listening to our Cryosphere Chat, we will see you. Actually, the next time we do something might be. Well, are we going to record again before Vitalis Bay?
Who knows? You never know with this podcast. Okay.
It'll be a surprise to us as well. All right,
maybe,
everybody.
Maybe.
Maybe that's the answer.
Yeah.
Until next time.
Bye.
See you later. Bye,
See ya.
everyone.